Deadpan Ghosts is a horror media podcast and as such may feature discussion of mature or disturbing subject matter. A full list of content warnings for this episode can be found in the description. Hi, welcome to Deadpan Ghosts, a horror podcast hosted by two real-life ghosts. Vernon.
That's me.
And their plucky co-host, Jonathan. And today we are talking about the 1999, is that correct?
That's right.
Classic horror movie, POV horror movie, The Blair Witch Project. Vernon, what did you think of this movie?
Wow. Thank you, Jonathan. Well, as always, we just floated out of the room in which the people we haunt watch movies. And I, going in, thought this was not a ghost movie. This is the ghostiest of movies I've ever seen.
It honestly feels pretty ghosty in some segments. I'm gonna be real. And for this episode, I've had the bonus experience of not only watching The Blair Witch Project, but watching the also released in 1999, slightly before the film, The Curse of the Blair Witch, a 45-minute kind of mockumentary that was used to market the film, right? And it was a part of that big advertisement campaign.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to hear about it. I don't know what it covers.
Well, the documentary covers quite a bit of background lore, I would say, for the town of, it was once called Blair.
And so this mockumentary is not, it furthers the parade, the charade.
Yes, it does. Yeah, kind of the hoax that this movie was cashing in on. They even kind of play the, oh, well, it could be a hoax card in the mockumentary, which is pretty funny. They overplay their hand maybe a little bit because one of them says something about, oh, well, the footage is so realistic. And I'm like, but we can talk about that.
I have seen this movie. I saw this movie when I was probably like 10 or 12 years old. And I remember before I watched it, there was probably like a 15-minute period where my parents were trying to give me the full experience and try to convince me that it was actually real. That only lasted until I became hysterical and begged them to tell me that it's not true.
For sure.
They were like, fine, it's not true, it's not true.
Well, thank God, because it is not true. All the three students in the film and probably many of the interviewees, subjects of the quote-unquote documentary being made in the narrative of the film, they're all actors, right? And this is an independent film that used a very genius marketing campaign to get people interested. It had this kind of mockumentary that was put out. People kind of took it at face value for the most part, and there was a website called blairwitch.com, I believe, where that missing poster shows up of the three characters in the film.
That's pretty heavy duty. That's quite a move.
Yeah, and all the actors are their characters' names are their actual names.
Oh, even worse or even better.
And I believe it's not completely a hoax though, right? Because the studio artisan, they knew what was going down with this thing. They were probably the ones pushing for that kind of marketing campaign in the first place, right? So they had the actors sign various agreements, each of them, to not appear in anything for a while, to kind of, publicly lay low so that this could kind of spread around for a while. And people do like to, tell people, like your own parents did with you when you were young and alive.
Back then.
That, yeah, this really happened, and oh, isn't that spooky? These kids disappeared in the woods.
It does help that you've never seen these actors ever again. Bless their heart.
I'm sure that maybe they've done some things, but
But if they were in another super famous thing, it would, or it wouldn't, I mean, the experience of watching this, you're still,
Right.
you can still have such a visceral feeling like these are real people.
A lot of horror fans like having unknowns in movies that are kind of supposed to be taken as something that could have possibly really happened, you know? A lot of people like that kind of thing. I think it really works for the most part here.
Yeah, the beginning of the movie is really great. They interview a bunch of kind of local people about this legend,
Yes.
and they're all just, delivering this lore, and they do refer to it as, the ghosts and the legends of Maryland, as I wrote in my mental ghost notes.
For sure. This is some real, East Coast, what were they called? Pilgrim legends kind of stuff, you know? It's a really interesting little portion of kind of beasts and haunts.
Yeah, they say that it's a haunting story, and I was getting very excited. I was surprised, I guess, somehow. But it takes place on Halloween too. It was supposed to. They were filming on October 24th for several days, so all leading up to Halloween.
They're lost for a while, but we can get into that. So there's three, or actually I think it's two. Josh and Heather are both film students, and then Mike is a friend of Josh, I believe, who's coming along and helping them. And he's got a normal job of some kind, but they're going out to the town of Burkittsville, Maryland, formerly Blair, to investigate the legend of the Blair Witch in that area. And there are a lot of events throughout history that have helped propagate this legend of some kind of witch that lives in the forest, or perhaps some spirits that live in the forest. There's a lot going on in this town, and they interview a lot of residents. Some of them are like, that's all just silly myths. And then some residents who are like, oh, I believe it. I believe there's something weird going on in those woods, right? And all of them are really good. All of these people feel really of the town and real. I really like the extras that we get.
Yeah.
Just the townspeople.
There's this lady who's holding her kid in her arms as she's telling one of the main bits of the ghost story, and the kid starts to kind of freak out and like say no, no, no. And it felt so real. That was one of the best, it was scary.
Well, it was probably a happy accident. Heather, I think, kind of improvs in the middle there. Oh, that's kind of a bad omen, huh? Because the baby, puts its hand over the mom's mouth, like, you can't speak about this.
Yeah,
it's pretty funny.
That was so epic.
And the mom is like, "Oh, just telling a scary story, honey, but it's not real." And then she mouths towards the camera, "It's real."
Yeah, I went to film school before I was a ghost. Since I've seen this movie, like in the interim, in between seeing this movie as a kid, and it's definitely really interesting to see a portrayal of film students, and I think they do a pretty great job. It does have this feeling of like every time they get something so great like that, I'm really proud of the whole thing. Like, great job, that's some magic right there
for sure.
And it happens a lot.
Yeah, and there's an element where they'll do something kind of poorly, and then it'll cut to them back in the car like, oh, I don't know if I measured that shot depth right. I don't know. We're gonna need to take a look at that.
It's in meters, I think. I'm pretty sure it's in meters.
Yeah.
They did well. I think there's a certain sense to the dialogue that's like, when it's something they're supposed to say, it's not as good. Right. But when it's them kind of riffing, it's really, really good.
Dynamic, yeah. And I think they have chemistry. Yeah, but you can tell, I think, that they kind of go into the woods with an idea of a plot, and they kind of work it out on location, the finer details of the film, right? The first shot that these students go out and get is by a graveyard. Here in this graveyard, there are an unusual number of dead children, is how it's put to us. And these kids, died a variety of ways, probably over the years, but this has contributed to the legend of the Blair Witch. She's out there in the woods, she's snatching your children, right?
Yeah, there's a whole story of these 7 missing kids.
Yes, the mockumentary Curse of the Blair Witch goes into a little bit more detail on this. This was actually the work of a serial killer.
Right, there's two stories going on. The Blair Witch is over here, and then there's this man, like an old hermit.
And this is kind of important, actually. Yeah, he's an old hermit. He's called the Burkittsville Killer. And his name is Rustin Parr. And from a kid who was kidnapped and then escaped, we get the witness testimony that the Burkittsville Killer told them to stand and face the wall and would kill other kids behind them while they were facing the wall. And killed a kid and said, I'll be back with another one. This is probably me mixing information from both the movie and the mockumentary a little bit.
But they make it clear in the movie, and this is like one of the biggest kind of images that the opening interview montage tries to get across, is this scenario of the kids.
For sure. And it's a pretty scary kind of thing.
For sure.
And this happened in the 1940s, but the myth of the witch actually goes back to the 1700s, Pilgrim times. 1785 specifically, a woman named Ellie Kedward was thrown out of her community for being a witch, supposedly, and was actually tied to a tree in the forest and supposedly died of exposure. But then things started getting weird, water started getting unusable to poisoned by germs or whatever, and kids start going missing, and a bunch of crazy events happen that kind of contribute to this legend and the kind of aura of fear.
That's interesting. In the movie, they meet this old lady named Mary Brown. I wrote in my mental ghost notes. And she tells this time where she was a little girl fishing with her father, and she saw this woman who was supposed to be real hairy and have a shroud that she envelops and
Yeah, so this is really interesting, her kind of description of a fur-colored witch. We get a nice artist rendition of what the witch might look like in The Curse of the Blair Witch, incidentally, and she's just kind of she looks like just a green witch, right? She looks like Gruntilda. She looks like, the Wicked Witch in Wizard of Oz.
They do make a Wizard of Oz reference, yes.
Yes. But that was pretty funny to me. But this fur-covered kind of Witch of the Woods aesthetic sounds pretty interesting. No witch to be seen in the Blair Witch Project. That is something I will say right up front. This movie doesn't have, a money shot. We'll talk about it at some point. We're not quite there yet, because we wanted to cover this movie before any other POV horror films, since it's such an important kind of touchstone for the genre, right?
Yeah.
It's not the first POV horror movie, but it definitely is one of the popularizers of the format.
It's not the first one?
No, it's not the first one. There's others, such as Cannibal Holocaust, etc.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we don't necessarily have to talk about that one. There's probably no ghosts, I'm pretty sure.
I hope not.
Though, but in Paranormal Activity, there's a money shot, right in other movies. You definitely see the monster. The Blair Witch Project, by comparison, is much more a movie about what you can't see and what you don't see, right?
And what you hear.
It's about what you hear, what you might have seen, but you're not sure, right?
Yeah, a lot of darkness.
Shaking camera in the woods, very blurry, impossible to make out, even in the daytime when they're running with the camera. But when it's dark, get out of here. Your eyes are searching for something, though.
Get out of here.
Your eyes are searching for something. And so this experience of being disoriented, it leads you to kind of, if you're really intently watching the movie, kind of look for what's not there in the dark, which is a really cool feeling. And maybe more movies should kind of experiment with that. I don't think it's a perfect film all the way through. Maybe it has a kind of a pacing issue.
I don't know. I thought it was full throttle. It took no time at all.
Well, it is a very short movie, so that does make up for it, perhaps. But Mary Brown, this lady that they talked to, is kind of considered a crazy person in town, right? So she doesn't have the most, we'll say, reliable, trusted input.
But she's their big lead
Mm-hmm.
to going into the woods. Like the reason they go, they're looking for a specific, grave site, a graveyard in the middle of the woods.
That's true.
Based on her recommendation.
Right. And they do pack up and go into the woods after a short break. They had a really good day of filming, and you get a little chance to see, how they kind of bond and interact with each other as co-workers. Josh and Mike are drinking a little bit, and Heather is like, all right, I'm going to take a shot. And Mike is like, oh, you can't do that. You're the director. And then right after that, she's like, does anybody have any weed?
Yeah, they're living it up. They're having their last good day.
They are. They're,
But there's a little underlying tension. There's a little, they don't know each other. They're not the best of friends.
No.
And so there's not 100% trust. It's not like going camping with your family.
Well, Josh and Heather is apparently close, but Mike is kind of the third wheel, we'll say. Obviously not romantically, but you have a theory, which I've often thought about, that three-person groups are always kind of toxic in some way.
Yeah.
And I was really thinking about that a lot watching this movie.
Yeah. There's always going to be a one person left out, no matter what.
Or
I have said that.
Kind of ripped into a little bit too much, made fun of a little bit too much,
Yeah,
and I think that
sure.
Mike.
I thought Heather was the main person to get picked on.
Well, there's a switch that happens. At first, it's kind of Mike because Josh and Heather know each other, but there comes a point where I think Josh starts to side with Mike more, and the situation that they're in strains that relationship, right? Because in the mockumentary, it is brought up that Josh and Heather had worked together before, I guess. There's pictures of them working on stuff together. This might be actual pictures from, their college, when they were making college films or whatever. And because there's a lot of people that are interviewed in this mockumentary, people who knew the kids, like Mike's brother and the film professor. And this film professor is like, I didn't really like Josh. I don't think he had the commitment. Yeah.
Speaking ill of the dead.
I don't think he had the commitment to really...
Have you seen the Blair Witch Project?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. But he really... Yeah, he's trash-talking this kid. He's like, I don't think he can find his own voice. Heather was the talented one.
Oh my God.
I voiced my concerns. Which is crazy. And even Mike's brother is kind of like, yeah, he was always kind of the wild kid, cursing when the golden rule in the house was that you're not supposed to curse. And I'm like, that's it? That's his...
That's all, well, he yells. He ends up, he gets
He yells
angry.
a lot. Yeah, he's a tense character, it turns out. But, very quickly, there is kind of a tense dynamic here. And I think I thought about your three-person group theory the whole time. Really funny.
Wow. Yeah. Brutal. They have lots of interviews. And the last one, they're all packed up and they're on the kind of the border of this woods area. It's these two fishermen. And one of them, she struggles to get his attention and his permission to record his face. And I loved all that. He did really well.
Yeah.
They're telling a story about them seeing white, misty, gray vapor, I wrote down in my mental ghost notes, rise. And so their end of the story was much more about the witch and her ghostly qualities.
For sure.
Which was sick.
And one of them is like, that's bullshit. You're not making any sense. Because the other guy is like, I saw the witch, right? And they talk a little bit about a case near Coffin Rock, a rock by a stream.
Yeah.
Apparently, 5 men died there, were tortured in some way and killed and put there, right?
Yes.
And then their bodies vanished when the people returned to, get them out of there.
Yes.
Give them a burial, I presume.
And Heather's like, this is the rock. I am in front of it.
Yeah.
We are here, and I'm not scared. I loved that, but obviously she's kidding herself.
There's another incident that is brought up by the fishermen with a girl named Robin Weaver, who...
I wrote that in my mental ghost note.
For sure. She apparently disappeared. I actually have a little bit more about this because I saw the mockumentary. This was in the 1880s, the incident with the 5 dead men vanishing.
Okay.
In my notes, I have something about, and this is actually interesting to us. In 1825, a girl named Eileen Traker was pulled into the shallow streams by a ghostly white hand, and
Wow.
apparently 11 people saw this happen.
Oh, a whole party was going on.
You're right. Well, there's a guy that writes in once this news starts to spread. He writes in to the reporting about it to the newspapers, and he's like, "You shouldn't be spreading this crap. This is a dead child we're talking about. Clearly, this was parental negligence. They just fucking weren't watching her, and she drowned." So that's a really entertaining part. There's a lot of entertaining parts of the mockumentary where people are arguing like, "This myth is bullshit."
It's crazy that it came out before the movie.
I know, it's so good. It's so genius, honestly. And I really liked it. I thought it's 45 minutes. It's honestly worth a watch. It's great supplemental viewing. I would recommend it.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a documentary about that broke the illusion, but to find out that it's, basically
it's
deleted scenes or like fake behind the scenes, that sounds great.
Yeah, it's really cool. And some of the footage is from the movie, but actually very little footage is from them because it wants to be a trailer for the movie, ultimately a 45-minute long trailer, and I think it really works. But this is not the only instance, the one I just talked about, of kind of ghostly behavior in these legends. The man, one of the fishermen, the one who supposedly saw the witch, says that when she walked, she didn't touch the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of ethereal,
Just like me and you.
Mm-hmm. A different description than what Mary Brown gave, right? Which is interesting.
Did she describe walking?
I don't know if she described the Blair Witch as walking or not, frankly. We'd have to run that back. But I know that she described...
mostly the fur.
Yeah, the fur, mostly. And that is not something that is brought up with the fisherman.
Comes up again.
No, but it's interesting. I mean, I like kind of this genre of witch that lives in the woods, right? And I figure like a wood witch might have some elements of being a part of the woods, perhaps.
Gosh, is there any other witch?
Any other stuff from the mockumentary?
No, like, is there any other type of witch?
Well, sure. There's the green witch, and then there's just your garden variety witch, just somebody who practices black magic, I guess.
Yeah, I do like the woods witch.
There's other types of witches in other cultures and
Yeah.
religions as well.
Baba Yaga.
For sure. But she's kind of a woods witch as well, though. There is one more thing. This guy, Lucan Johnson, they have like a 70s kind of TV dude who has a show called Mystic Occurrences, and he narrates some of this information to us. And it's honestly really funny. He's got like hippie glasses, and his whole shirt is open, and his chest hair is puffing out, and
Oh my gosh.
and he's like sitting there like talking about this witch shit, and he talks about the Blair Witch Cult book, which I think Heather has and has read a bit of.
Right, they pick it up and she's like, real book, definitely, totally real.
Yeah, and he talks about Wiccanism and how it's a very recent religion because most of the witches back in the day were killed in the trials and whatnot. So, like, some crazy stuff going on in this mockumentary. Just a bunch of background info. Lore hounds would love it.
Well, it sounds pretty unmissable, honestly. Sounds great.
After this interaction with the two fishermen, which we are now finally getting past, they find Coffin Rock. And they shoot a little bit around Coffin Rock. They explain the story about the 5 dead men who vanished. And then they get lost. Right?
I think their first shooting location in the woods was Coffin Rock, and their second one was this supposed graveyard. So before they get lost, and I made a big note is that they crossed the river. They were looking, so they find the graves on the other side of the river, and it's like a bunch of stones
Right.
in 7 little piles. She counts all these piles.
Right.
And so
they
for each of the kids that disappeared.
Naturally, they come across the stones
I think
first.
Josh says like Indian burial ground.
Yes, he does bring that up. Oh, thank you. Thank you
Classic
for
ghost movie name drop.
For real. Why do we always have to have the Native American burial ground?
But like the movie doesn't make clear the pilgrim element, so I guess Maryland and that kind of element does. But you know, if the mockumentary makes it clear, then it probably is those vibes.
Yes, definitely. But I think, like you said, it's definitely 7 piles of stones for the 7 kids that were killed by the serial killer, right?
Which is different.
And certainly not a Native American burial ground.
Unrelated.
I'm glad you brought it up because this is just something that personally gets on my nerves as your lovely ghost host. But in the first episode, I was adamant that there was a Native American burial ground in Poltergeist. And explicitly in the film, the real estate boss, CEO guy says it's not like it's a Native American burial ground. And but I was still trying to kind of like figure out a way that it could be in my mind, despite that very in your face line.
Yeah.
You know what I think it is? I think it's like we talk about frequently, the Barbra Streisand effect. Is that right?
We talk about this frequently. Is that right?
Sometimes.
And what is this effect?
Not the Barbra Streisand effect. It's the Mandela effect.
Oh, wow. I think maybe in your reality, it's called the Barbra Streisand effect.
That's exactly it. So, like, a lot of people are going around and thinking that there's a Native American burial ground in Poltergeist, and it's just because the words are said, right?
Maybe this movie. Maybe people think that there's one in this movie, but it's this other story about this serial killer and these kids.
Correct. It has nothing to do with natives. I think that's just a dumb line that Josh said, a dumb thing he said, you know?
He is dumb. A little.
A little bit. His film professor even thinks so.
Yeah, oh man. What a scathing review.
That's right. They're not the only ones who get trash talked. Heather gets trash talked a little bit too. Apparently Josh has like a girlfriend in the mockumentary, and she's like, I didn't like that girl. I didn't like him going out there with her.
Dang. What a thoroughly cast fake documentary.
I loved it.
I love that.
Yeah. But
when they're in front of the pile of rocks, Heather is referencing something that the old lady Mary Brown said. Mm-hmm. But I didn't remember her saying it. I think they kind of are saying things she said that weren't on camera.
For sure.
And it's some, biblical reference to a pile of rocks.
It's definitely something biblical going on there, for sure. I feel the interpretational vibe.
Yeah.
one of the rocks falls over, seemingly.
Oh man, that's a bad omen.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
That was awesome. And she tries to put it back on its grave, which I would do. I mean, I feel like it felt so me. I would mess up like that.
I think it's revealed not directly on camera, but something that Josh or perhaps Mike says is that she took one of those stones. Is that right?
Yeah. I heard that.
Yeah.
It's ringing the bell.
It's like a line that is said, but it's not like revealed.
Interesting.
In a proper way, where it's like not taken out of a bag or anything. The camera never is shown this object that she has taken.
Wow.
But it's referenced later, and that's interesting. She puts the stone back in this scene though, and she's like, "Better safe than sorry," or something like that. And then
yeah. And then they get lost.
They get severely lost, and I think it's Mike who is like, "Are you sure that you know where we are?" And Heather, very kind of unconfidently goes like, "Yeah. No, trust me, bro. I definitely know how to read this map." And so
yeah, the map. I mean, can you read a map, Jonathan?
I can't read a fucking map.
I've never tried.
It was the 90s though.
Yeah, maps were all the rage. Everybody was talking about it.
GPS was a thing, but it wasn't like it is today with our phones where we all have.
No, they don't have a phone.
Yeah.
That's Gotta be clear.
And so they have to read this map, and they all have a hard time with it, to be clear. Heather is the one who seems to be most familiar with the map, but she's not great at reading the map. And Mike sits down with the map, and he's like, I'll be honest, this is fucking Greek to me.
Yeah, so I just have to trust you.
I just have to trust
but
you.
I don't. I'm struggling to trust you.
Yes.
That was great.
Yes, and this is where the relationships start to get a little bit frayed, right? So, what's next?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of hard to piece together kind of the sequential order of events. They camp for the night, right?
Yeah. They keep having to camp, and in the night, it's pitch black. The movie's really asking you to listen.
Yeah.
You know, it's very like it's you're on the edge of your seat, kind of relying on your ears.
Yeah. These are quiet woods, but you can hear kind of in the distance, and it starts to get louder, some footsteps, and it sounds like multiple people.
Yeah, like limbs cracking, bunch of, cracking branches.
Yeah, and so they all go outside the tent to see who's out there, and then they can't find anybody.
Very brave, though.
Very brave of them on this first night. They go back to sleep, it seems, to stop after they go check outside. In the morning, they're all wondering what that could have been. They think maybe it was some kids or some people from the town. One of them is, I believe Josh, is like, I don't know who it could have been, but have you seen Deliverance?
I wrote Deliverance. I think they leave a bunch of piles of rocks around their camp. Isn't that what happens next?
Did they do that the first night?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And they wake up and they're like, okay, clearly we're not welcome. Let's just get going. It's super scary.
Yeah, there's a bunch of, a circle of rocks around the tent. 3 piles of rocks. Completely, perfectly circling the tent. So that's weird, yeah.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, and they're even like, these weren't here when we went to set up camp, right? And she's like, there's no way we would...
accidentally.
Coincidentally. They move on from that, and they keep walking. What do they find next?
You're asking me for real, because it's hard to put it all back together. We just floated out of the room.
It really is like, we're lost in the woods with them, and time is running together, and we're all like, oh, how long have we been out here? Even though it's only been 80 minutes.
The last time we saw the map was when he was like, this is Greek to me, I just have to trust you.
Mm-hmm.
The next day, they're like, where's that map?
Yes.
And there's no more map.
That's right. They start arguing about it, and Josh, very adamant that he didn't do anything with the map, and Heather is very adamant that she has not lost the map. She always keeps it in the same place, she said, and so if it's not there, one of them must have done something with it. Mike says that he didn't do anything with the map. So they move on from that for a little while.
They have a compass that they reveal that they have at some point,
right?
Which they rely on somewhat. But they cross a river again.
Yes, they cross a few rivers in this movie on log.
They laugh at, which I kept thinking, like, that's a bad idea.
Yes. Oh, well, this is the one...
I don't know if that's a true piece of wilderness advice, don't cross rivers, but it just felt like you're going to get lost. Keep the water on the same side or something.
For sure. You should follow the river, honestly, not cross it.
Well, one of the nights they basically, I think they go in a big circle and they end up at the same log, very defeated.
Well, there is a sense that because it doesn't make logical sense that they would end up there. Oh,
that's magic, ghost magic.
Exactly. There might be some witchy ghost magic going on, and the forest.
You can't leave the woods.
Yeah,
Oh man, why did you go in the ghost witch woods?
So it could be that all this stuff about the map wouldn't have helped them anyway. But yeah, they cross these stones, this river. And Josh and Mike are kind of like laughing at Heather. They're both pretty annoyed with her because at this point it's assumed that Heather lost the map, which Josh says is the most irresponsible thing she could have done. They're already both annoyed with her because she said she could read the map and seemingly has gotten them lost.
Yeah.
So they're both treating her like she's on pretty thin ice with them. She doesn't appreciate being laughed at this point, though. And she calls it out, and it kind of sparks an argument where, Josh starts freaking out on her more than he ever has at this point, and Mike has been the meanest to her so far. He's a little yelly, like you said before, but Josh kind of starts to exhibit some aggression towards her as well at this point. And is this before or after they run across the Wicker Men?
Wow. Yeah, we are lost in the woods.
It's not a one thing happens and leads to the next kind of movie.
It isn't. It's like
it's something you experience, but there's no cause and effect to the plot for a good portion of it.
That's a good
It's
point.
just things really, really slowly ramp up until it's at its most tense and then at its most scary when things kind of fly off the handle.
We can say that they find the Wicker Man next.
At some point in the film, they do find these Wicker Men.
Yeah, it's the symbol on the cover of the movie.
That's right. It's like an X with a cross. Yeah, a little stick figure man. And
at one point, Heather sees Josh's bare chest, and they're focusing on his chest hairs.
True.
And I'm pretty sure it's in the shape of the Wicker Man.
Right. Well, that's interesting. That is interesting. Yeah.
Facts. I think it's an undeniable fact.
Yeah. There's like a bald spot in exactly the places where there would be no marking.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty.
I was on top of it. I knew what was going on. He shaved for that.
He did. That's not a natural chest hair formation.
Impossible formation.
Crazy stuff. And
there's loads of Wicker Men, and they get really mad at Heather for filming, for continuing to film in general. There's this whole tension of please put the camera down, please stop.
Might not be true, but this may be the first example of it's a POV horror movie. Stop filming, we're in danger. Why are you filming with the camera?
Right.
And the other character is like, if I stop filming, there's not a movie anymore.
Well, this one does it really well.
It does.
Where at one point they switch cameras and Josh is looking through the one that Heather's been using, and it covers your whole eye when you're using it.
That's right.
And you close the other eye, so he's like, wow, it's like I get it now. It's like you can block everything out and you're in your own reality.
Yeah, there's a bit of...
in which Barbra Streisand died in jail in the 80s.
For sure. There's a bit of, I want to say, late 90s kind of social commentary going on there. Yeah, at one point Josh starts really laying into her, like, we're making a movie. Come on, let's go make a movie.
Here's your motivation. Your motivation is that you're lost and nobody's going to help you and you're going to die. Yeah, that was...
yeah, it's the worst Josh gets. And even Mike is like, dude, don't.
Well, yeah, there's this interesting roller coaster where they keep, like, yelling at each other and apologizing.
Yes.
And because they're just... And
well,
there's some nice moments where they're like, all blame aside, this is pretty fucked up.
Well, I think it's Mike who says, we really need to work together to get out of here. And
yeah, and that was breaking my heart. They start to...
Yeah.
They start to lose hope that they're ever going to get out of there.
For sure. They start to lose it kind of one by one.
Well, okay, right. The next night, the tent, it's like a really hectic. People are like something's touching the tent. There's like little voices of kids.
Yeah.
Ghost kids.
Yeah, the ghost kid and a screaming baby, they say, is heard.
Oh yeah. They reference, but I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear that either. But I guess it's in the mix there somewhere. Maybe it's off in the distance. I don't know. In any case,
they run out. They are so scared.
Yeah.
They bolt out. Oh my gosh.
They bolt.
That is scary.
Right like the wind bullseye, and they're out of there. But yeah, they like hunch down in the darkness because they can't hear the noises anymore. And they
spend the rest of the night just sitting in the middle of the woods.
Yeah, they stay there for like an hour, and then it's daylight. So they go back. And when they go back, there's...
Specifically Josh's stuff.
Has
been like messed with.
Yes, all their stuff has been kind of like moved around, but Josh's stuff in particular has what is described as blue slime on it.
Oh my gosh.
That's the ectoplasm. That's the ectoplasm, ladies and gentlemen.
I couldn't believe what was happening. He was like, Mike was like, is that slime? And Josh touches it, that is slime.
Yeah.
And he describes it later as blue jelly shit.
Blue jelly shit. And he's like, why is it on my stuff? And it's because he's
been marked.
He's probably the first to go. But we'll see. For now, they have to cross another log, right?
Yeah.
So many logs to cross, and these are perilous logs. Every time they remark on how hard it is to cross these logs.
When I was in film school, my first film had somebody crossing a big river gap on a giant pipe, but it was kind of
it's a stunt for real.
Yeah.
And these actors are doing a stunt for us on the camera.
Yeah, with all the gear on them, crazy.
They're playing freaking what's that game called? Vernon, help me out.
Oh, they're playing a game?
They're playing goddamn Death Stranding on those logs, you know?
Yeah, I would not have gotten there, Jonathan. I'm glad you got there.
You, yeah. But yeah, fucking, oh god, I can keep my balance. I wish another player left a ladder for me.
They're at one point they are singing America the Beautiful, maybe?
Oh, no.
I don't know.
This is the second time, Vernon, that this has come up on the cast somehow. Poltergeist is in the conversation again. Because they start singing the Star Spangled Banner and like laughing it up a little bit. Like they're honestly losing it.
There's a little like curse, like there's a little God biblical vibe where they're like, God shed his grace on thee.
Yes.
And then very quickly it cuts to them later. Mike is panicking and shouting. He screams, "Fuck you, God."
Yes.
Couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So just this like whiplash kind of effect of them really trying to hold it together, trying their best, but breaking down constantly.
For sure. They lose their belief in God. They lose their faith that they're going to get out of there. And maybe in America in some ways, you know, the whole deliverance aspect is brought up, and then...
Yeah, they keep saying that it's impossible to get lost.
In America these days. And,
it is something.
Well, no, it's not. You just did it, you know? Right. And maybe that has to do with, you know, something supernatural, or maybe it's just really a lot easier to get lost in the woods than you think, right? There's definitely something going on in this movie, though.
This might be the point where Mike admits...
Yes.
...to throwing the map
away. This is such a good scene. And I've brought up that this movie, you know, it feels improvised in places before. If this is improvisation, it's brilliant conflict for the movie. Yeah. So Mike...
Yeah, up until this point, Josh and Heather are so, like, they don't know who to blame. They want to blame themselves and each other. But to finally have somebody to blame, they both freaking unleash.
Yeah, because
and it is...
Heather's been the one to blame so far, it feels like. Whenever she has someone else to blame in particular, she lets it all out because of her guilt. And there'll be more kind of unpacking of that later. But... yeah, she really lets Mike have it. But also, what an asshole move. And I really want to take a moment and talk about this performance here for a second. Because Mike starts Joker laughing. He is hands on his knees, keeled over, just guffawing.
Like he's gone
crazy. And for a minute, they're like, Mike, what's funny? Mike, are you okay? And he's like, oh, that fucking map. You know what I did? I kicked that fucking map into a fucking stream. And I'm glad I did it. That fucking map was useless and it's gone now. It can't help us. It's my favorite scene in the movie. It's really out there. Why did he do that?
It is out there.
And he just keeps repeating over and over again, that map couldn't help us. And Heather screams, it couldn't help you. It couldn't help you. I could read it. Debatable.
Now, I thought you were going to be coming in here with a lot of knowledge of the behind the scenes, but the documentary is a mockumentary, and so I don't know if you know much how this movie was made, and somehow I've osmosis learned a little bit over the years.
Okay.
I think...
yeah, lay it on me.
...that maybe none of the three of them knew what happened to the map, and in the nighttime I think they were kind of like one-on-one directors meetings where the director was talking to each of the actors individually about, here's your motivation for the next day. So when Josh was yelling about, here's your motivation,
oh my God.
I think he was even referencing reality.
That's so good.
And so I think Mike just learned, and part of his direction was the suggested motivation to be like, that map wasn't going to do you any good, and so he was repeating what he was kind of told.
Yeah.
to say, I think.
Well, for sure, for sure.
Like all movies are, I guess.
But definitely, like, just an improvisational energy. I think that comes from just a couple of people on set not knowing what's going to come, or not knowing quite how they're going to pull a plot point off, because that, that's probably not the only take they made of that.
Do you think they were doing takes? That's
Well,
interesting.
for sure. I mean,
I guess that's so ignorant or naive of
shooting
me.
on film? I don't know.
I guess they were doing takes. It was just...
Well, everything about the movie is so
Wow.
inexpensive.
Of course.
I think that they definitely could afford to do multiple takes.
Wow. I think I really just fell for the magic trick, honestly. Like...
Yeah, and
It all seemed...
It all feels...
I know it was edited and made, but it seems like...
For sure.
The stuff that you film in your home movie as a kid.
Well, yeah.
And so...
Because it's mixed in...
Dang.
Documentary footage with like a home movie and kind of like coworker footage, behind the scenes footage.
Yeah.
And then, the documentary goes out the window at a certain point, and this just becomes a film about them getting lost in the woods, which is exactly what Josh and Mike didn't want it to be.
Yeah.
I think for Heather's, for what it's worth, she knows she's got gold on her hands if anyone ever finds this camera.
Yeah, there might be some... I mean, I think people who get involved in film want to live forever on the film.
It's a really distorted vision of reality. Josh says to her, you don't have to feel like what's happening is quite real.
Yeah. Which is about this genre, this found footage thing. It's fear, kind of in the what you don't see in the camera, what's just outside.
For sure, one cool thing about it is that oftentimes in perhaps some of the artsier POV horror movies, the cameras they're using are quite, we'll say, low quality.
Bad.
That's good. And so...
Right, these were checked out from college. These are their college film cameras.
For sure. I mean, they're good for an independent film project. They're good for... There's a lot that the camera's not picking up, especially when it's dark. Not only is it hard to see because of that darkness, but it's just hard to see because there's less information that the camera can literally pick up. It's really cool. But... After all that...
I'm pretty sure Josh has his big yell out about the motivation, and it's all Heather's fault, and then he's apologizing in the tent at night, and it's all like everybody kind of gets a last nice little moment.
For sure.
And Josh disappears off screen.
Yeah, he's gone.
Next morning, everybody's screaming for Josh.
He was marked by the blue slime.
By the ectoplasm.
Yeah.
From this ghost.
The ghostly ghosts took him. Or the witch, or whoever. Maybe it was some town guys, who knows? In any case...
Or the evil, or the murderer, man.
Well, it could be... I think in the mockumentary, he was sentenced to death. There's a whole interview with the serial killer.
What?
There's a guy...
You keep coming up with more revelations.
I know. There's a guy who plays the serial killer, and he's credited.
Holy crap. Does it ruin the whole... mystery? That's like showing...
No, not really, because he was put to death. Could be his ghost.
Now you're talking.
Now I'm talking your language.
But poor Josh.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's screaming.
Never to be seen again.
Screaming.
Yeah, they're screaming his name. They can't find him. So it's just Heather and Mike at this point, and really trying to keep it together now that Josh is gone.
Right. I love Mike all of a sudden.
No, I agree.
Mike realizes that he suddenly becomes faced with death.
It's true.
I suppose. And he's like, we're just let's just keep... I don't know. He gives a really great performance.
He eats a dry leaf. They run out of food at some point, and they complain about running out of cigarettes, but he finds some cigarettes in a pack, and he's kind of rocking back and forth and going crazy a little bit, and he's like, I found some cigarettes in the very bottom of my pack, and that means we're alive because we're smoking.
Preach.
This is also the part of the movie where they start talking about the food that they miss.
Yeah, I liked that.
One of them's like, I have a burger in my back pocket. You want a burger? And they laugh, and then it's like, you know what I miss?
Mashed potatoes.
I miss mashed potatoes. And they do start talking about like traditionally Thanksgiving-themed foods, which is interesting considering all the pilgrim, all that stuff, yes. Native burial ground, something there. And they start talking about pumpkin pie.
Oh, they do. Mm-hmm. You're onto something.
Perhaps. Yeah, it's Mike and Heather on their own, just trying to keep each other alive and keep each other from going crazy.
Right, the next morning they have, oh, in the night,
Yes.
actually first, they hear screaming of Josh.
They do.
And Mike's like, tell me where you are.
For sure, they're yelling out into the woods, but they don't want to go into the woods because they're concerned that this could be a trick. Obviously, they've already been hearing things
Terrible.
in the woods, and
So scary. I imagined you out there. What would I do? We're both alive in this scenario. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do because I couldn't. I froze in my boots.
yeah, they can't be sure that it's him. They're not quite sure if it's his voice or not. Even if it sounds like his voice, they're not sure.
It's so scary.
So they don't go out there.
I would know your voice though.
Yeah.
Nobody could mimic you.
No. Thank you. That feels good to know.
Yeah. So I would definitely not come after because I would know it's you and there's no hope.
No, these humans and their arguments and their stupid maps.
Yeah. TG, I am a ghost. The next morning, they receive a bundle of sticks wrapped in some of Josh's shirt.
Yes, and they move it away from the tent,
Right.
but later Heather goes back to it.
All right, this is another one of those instances where the director had to show up and be like, I need you to go look at what's in there and film it. But her improv instinct was great for her to just throw it away. I mean, that was...
So there's some kind of...
that both vibes are in there, like what she would really do and what the movie wants her to do.
It's interesting that, like, during production, you know, they were kind of on their own out there, and they would have to, like, have information relayed to them.
Yeah, I think some of the stress like that added to
the performances,
the stress certainly. And the fear. I think they were legitimately filming and sleeping out there.
Yeah, they're doing such amazing work. You know, it's one thing to shoot a film in the woods, but to shoot like this in the woods, you know, you're actually camping. And I bet it really was cold.
I bet it was freezing.
Yeah. So on this bundle of sticks, there's some of Josh's shirt. Heather unwraps it, and there's a couple of things in here, it looks like, actually. This is like a witch's knapsack full of various witchly ingredients, it seems.
Is that what's in there?
To me, yeah, that's what it seems, because you can see some hair in the cloth, you see some blood, you see what looks like a tongue.
Okay, yeah.
And a finger.
Yeah.
And maybe an eye in there as well, and I think there's some teeth.
Oh, boy.
And it's implied that, you know, all this came from Josh, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Who else could it have been? And so,
right,
the witch has cursed them or something, or the ghosts, or
the murderer man,
the murderers. You know, maybe this
but if
is
he
all
was convicted in the lore. I think that that's not what happened. That it was the ghost, and the man never did anything. Maybe.
Well, he said, okay, Rustin Parr, the serial killer, told people that the reason he did this was because the Blair Witch told him to do it.
Oh,
now,
very important detail.
Was he just latching onto a well-known legend? People on both sides who were like, I think the witch told him to do it, and then, no, that's bullshit.
Yeah. Egad.
So, yeah, I really don't know what to think. If not some ghosts, there's probably some ghosts in those woods, definitely seemingly ghosts of children.
There was, I mean, undeniable, I heard the voice of kids,
so that's something.
That's almost the biggest confirmation. Yeah.
Yeah.
They find these parts of Josh.
And that's very scary.
They totally, you know, just...
Yeah, Heather actually doesn't tell...
Oh.
Heather doesn't tell Mike about this.
Yeah, right. That's probably a good move.
And in the middle of the night, she films a video. This is sometimes another cover of the movie, just her face in the lower right corner.
The most famous close-up.
Yes, and parody.
It comes at an hour and 10 minutes in the movie. There's only, like, 8 minutes left.
Because she's crying, and she's recording, like, last confessions about this fucked up situation. She's saying sorry to Josh's mom, sorry to Mike's mom, and sorry to her mom, and Dad. Dad gets thrown in there at the end. That she got them in this mess, and she admits that no matter what Mike is telling her now, because Mike's trying to be nice to her now, this is her fault because it was her project. She insisted on everything. She insisted they weren't lost. She insisted on where to go. All that. The guilt's really crashing down on her, whereas she was screaming at Mike earlier in the film. She's kind of accepted responsibility for everything that's happened after Josh's disappearance and seeming death, right?
Yeah.
And so
and then there's a noise out in the woods.
yeah,
and she's like looking.
for sure, she's looking around, and she's like, "What was that?"
Well, she says one of my favorite. Like she says, she's too afraid
She's too
to close her eyes.
Yeah.
And to look.
Yeah, that's really good. Afraid to close them and afraid to open them. And her eyes are so bloodshot, they're probably really tired. And her nose is running. A lot of people have parodied or made fun of this.
For sure.
The nose running. I'm pretty sure one of the Scary Movies has it.
Yeah.
But you can really see right up those nostrils. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's how all my home movies look.
It is a great scene, though. It's fantastic. Heart of the movie right there,
Yeah.
It's really sad what happens to this group. A lot of horror movies are kind of based around this falling apart. But here at the end, Mike and Heather are kind of there for each other, even though they're both kind of losing it.
Which I really liked. I really felt for them. And I was scared. I wanted somebody to make it out alive.
Yeah.
But they find the house. I think we forgot to mention there was supposed to be a haunted house.
Right. Well, this is the house that Rustin Parr killed the kids in. The wall that he told them to stand and face is part of this house in the woods, and it's completely dilapidated.
And they hear Josh.
And they go inside.
The reason they approach it is because he's like, "I'm in here."
That's right. They hear
Which did
Josh.
seem like a ghostly fake voice.
It did seem pretty fake at this part. Yes, and eerie and weird. This part of the movie is weird.
So Mike is like barreling. He won't slow down.
Runs in.
Which is one of the biggest ending things of tension.
Heather is screaming after Mike, screaming his name over and over again, telling him, please, slow down. And he rushes in there. He hears Josh's voice upstairs, so they run upstairs. House is completely torn open. There's busted windows, and there's graffiti on the wall that looks vaguely
little handprints.
Little handprints on the wall. This might be something that the serial killer made the kids do, I think is what's implied.
Yes.
I guess, or perhaps just kids over the years coming into the haunted house to leave their mark.
Yeah, it's ghost. It's ghost goo.
It's ghost goo on the walls. That's what it is. Every time I touch a wall, it leaves a nasty handprint.
It's canon.
And so Mike gets upstairs, and then Josh's voice starts coming from downstairs after that. That's weird. That's not how it should work. And so they run downstairs. Mike goes first, of course, and Heather is dragging behind him. They've both got a camera each at this point.
Yeah.
So Mike goes downstairs with the color camera and gets seemingly hit over the head, possibly, or the camera is at the very least knocked out of his hand. But there's a big slump sound, and the camera falls over. And we don't see his body or anything. We don't see him fall. No. We're just looking at the floor. And then Heather's going downstairs, and she's got the black and white camera, so it's even darker and scarier now. And it kind of seems like the color camera is the one that has voice, because she sounds far away from whatever microphone they're using until she gets closer to the camera. She's screaming Mike, she's screaming Josh. And when she gets downstairs, they're mostly using the cameras for light at this point, which is commonly how POV horror movies go.
Very cool.
Fair enough justification. And she sees, standing and facing the corner, Mike, like what the serial killer would make the kids do. And then Heather, seemingly, is attacked from behind, and her camera falls to the ground. And so...
And we hold. Maybe there's going to be a monster reveal.
Nope.
If you look really closely.
Nope.
If you wait just until the last second.
Roll credits.
Yeah.
It's pretty spooky. And people thought it was real. Even though, there are tells that it's not real. There are tells. In the mockumentary, even, there's credits. But, they don't keep it on the sleeve that this is a production.
Yeah.
The story is they found this footage a year later in the woods, and the mockumentary goes into even more detail, where it was it was under this ash and soil, and with these colonial era rocks.
Oh boy, colonial era.
They were not disturbed, and it was buried there, and there was some kind of a anthropology expedition, and the anthropology professor apparently comes upon the film stuff and sends it to the police.
Man.
And he reviews it and is like, well, there's nothing definite in this footage, right? We don't know what happened, really.
Yeah.
A lot of fuss is made in the mockumentary about how, the police really should have done more looking into that case. They really should have done more to find those kids. There's one lady who's like, I think really they saw something out there that they don't want us to know about, and maybe they know the Blair Witch is out there, and they're covering it up, you know?
Yes.
That's very fun. And
wow, 45 minutes, there's so much.
I know, seriously. And the sheriff is criticized by somebody. He's like, I think he could have done more. And then it cuts right to the sheriff, and he goes, I did a great job.
Wow.
It's really funny.
I might watch it.
I can recommend it. It's good.
Sounds good.
But yeah, this whole narrative about the lost footage being underground and exposed a year later, and oh, where are these kids? What happened to them? You know, eventually it mostly gets out that yes, this thing is fake. It's kind of a hoax, but not really, because the studio's in on the hoax, right? It's just a very clever marketing campaign.
Yeah.
It kind of ruled a section of pop culture for a while, right? People would tell other people, oh, this is the scariest movie ever made. And it really happened.
Yeah.
Even though they probably knew, most of them, that wasn't true. Yeah, people just want to get their friends, you know, and get them scared. So
it didn't work on me. I became too hysterical, and my parents had to
they had
give
to
up the ruse.
Put a stop to that.
Now, Jonathan, ask me about the sound-sensitive qualities of this movie.
Right, we haven't gotten into that yet. This is near the end of our cast.
I know.
How did you feel about the sound in this movie, Vernon, considering that you are a sound-sensitive ghost?
I know, and I was before I was a ghost, but now I'm even more sound-sensitive.
It's even worse. Ugh.
You know, the movie puts you into the reality of, like, all the edits are supposed to feel like it's the next thing you recorded. So the jumpiness in between audio qualities, I wasn't as offended by. I felt like I was able to get into that vibe. Like I alluded to, there's a lot of scenes of nighttime darkness where the fear is like, you're listening. The movie's asking you to listen. I don't know if I would recommend it to somebody exactly like me.
For sure. A lot of screaming.
Then the screaming. Yeah, there was 23 extremely loud, blaring screaming. They should call it the Blair Witch Project.
Blaring Witch Project. That's good.
So there was only 2 eatings, the leaf and then a chip that's called an Utz that I've never heard of.
Yeah, that dry leaf. Pretty nasty crunch.
I wanted them to eat. Even though I hate eating in movies, I was like, I hope you get a burger.
For sure.
Tragic.
Or pumpkin pie, mashed potatoes. Yeah. So not high on the sound sensitivity recommendation scale.
No, I couldn't.
No, but
that's okay though. I thought it was really, really good. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I think it drags sometimes. There's moments where my attention kind of goes out, and then I have to be like, "Oh, I'm watching a movie."
Oh boy.
But
whoa, that's scathing.
Yeah, but you know, it's kind of that no cause and effect to the narrative kind of problem. I think
that was a good hit on.
I think that what they have here is really good, though, and very influential for the genre. Everybody started making their own POV horror movies after this, and then there's kind of a second boom around Quarantine / Cloverfield / Paranormal Activity.
Yes.
And so, you know, this movie was very important to talk about before we jumped into some of that. Of course, at a certain point, most POV horror movies are going to end up being ghost movies or demonic possession movies, something like that, because they're very easy to shoot. It's easier to shoot a horror movie in a house than it is to shoot a horror movie in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
But we had to get this one out of the way, and I'm glad we did. I really like this movie. I've seen it many times, and I'm glad that you've enjoyed rewatching it after all these years.
Yeah, I don't think it was one to get out of the way. I think it's a ghost movie. And a super great ghost movie.
Right. Not get it out of the way in that it's homework or something like that.
No.
I do like the film. I have a good time watching it. Despite the few little criticisms that I have, I think it's classic, you know, undeniable classic. And really the context and the situation surrounding it is a part of that. I don't think it's kind of removable from that context, because that's the whole trick of the film.
Yeah.
So, It's good. But Vernon, what dates do you have for this movie?
Oh, of course I have dates. Now let me see if I can get them all straight. Today, the actual date that we are recording is January 22nd, which, if I remember anything, I remember everything. And that has been a date that we've highlighted for The Exorcist. That's Linda Blair's birthday.
Oh, January 22nd.
Today.
Cool.
Happy
birthday, Linda Blair.
Pretty sure I've heard the rumor that maybe this movie was named after her. Is that possible?
Oh, well, I did
It's
not.
in a real place.
I have not heard that. Right, I don't even know if Burkittsville is a real place, but Blair.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, very possible. Blair Witch Project. That's cool. If so,
One of the taglines was that it's scarier than The Exorcist.
They were really going for that scariest of all time title.
Really going for it.
Yeah.
All time, exactly. This movie premiered at Sundance Film Festival on January 25th, which is coming up. Coincidentally, was a date that came up in our last episode, the Child's Play episode. That's Dom Mancini's birthday, the creator of Chucky.
For sure. Don Mancini?
Well, you know, I was wrong. Whatever I said was wrong.
It's all good.
Then the movie that you watched, the mockumentary,
right, Curse of the Blair Witch,
came out July 11th, and the movie came out July 30th. The movie Runaway Bride with Richard Gere and Julia Roberts came out on the same day as Blair Witch Project.
Right, 1999.
Applause. Historically, on that same day, July 30th, the movie Jungle Cruise with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, which we just put on the ghost list because it may or may not have ghosts in it. So I was like, mention that. That's a unmissable mentionable.
Cool.
And then my dates, I always save the best for last. This is a weird one. I'm not looking at anything. I'm just remembering all this.
That's good.
With my ghost powers.
That's talent.
On July 11th, which is the day the mockumentary came out, is the day the first, historically, not in 99, right? Is the same day of the year that the first Sharknado movie, Sharknado.
Oh, well, that's pretty fun.
And then July 30th, the day that the actual Blair Witch came out, is the day that Sharknado 2 came out, historically.
Oh, you think they were copping those dates?
No, I don't. But I just think it's a whack coincidence.
Yeah, it is. That's weird.
And I'm pretty sure that's the end of my dates. There was no birthdays on this movie.
Well,
really,
that was a lot of dates. That was very good. Thank you, Vernon. We are about to wrap this up, but I do want to remind any listeners who have made it this far that if you have made it this far, you are a true believer. And what I'm going to need you to do for us is spread this little podcast around. We want the truth to be known that ghosts exist, and you don't gotta be any TV ghost hunter nonsense. Blah blah blah. We're right here. Look. We want to be found. And so, let somebody know. Convince your friends today about the truth of our ghostly existences. Like the video, subscribe, and, leave a comment about your favorite thing about the Blair Witch Project. Sound like a deal?
Wonderful, Jonathan. Absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. With that, we bid you farewell. This has been the end of our communal with you, the living. Say goodbye to the dead. Vernon, you want to take us on out of here?
Peace and love, everyone.
Peace and love. There's some ghosty shit going on in this movie, for sure.